And they said to me, it's fine, you just failed.
Yeah.
And
Get out.
you wasted 4 years of your life.
You're listening to The Cosmic Cast.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of The Cosmic Cast. I hope all you out there are having a wonderful week. I'm joined here, as per usual, with Ricky Behir.
Hello.
And the lovely Tom Harvey.
How's it going?
And I'm, of course, John Pernay-Fisher. It's been quite a busy few weeks for us all. We're just going to have a bit of a chit-chat and a general waffle about what we've been up to.
It's just been relaxing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just the usual relaxing that I do. I mean, the irony is that I handed in last week.
You handed in your
Yes.
PhD
Yes, it is.
thesis. That was last Monday, wasn't it?
Last Monday, yep. It
Yeah,
feels
and-
like ages ago already, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that whole of last week, by the time it came to Friday, I couldn't believe it was only Monday that I'd handed in. It
Yeah.
felt like such a long week.
Oh, it's a pretty, marked event.
Yeah, everyone kept on asking me the same question of, do you feel really relieved now?
But you'd finished months ago, hadn't you? There was no crunch for you, was there? Or was there?
Well, so I hadn't finished writing until maybe a few days before I handed in. And there's always that, but yeah, I was never in a situation where I didn't already have enough information to finish, if you know what I mean. Like, I didn't need more data.
Yeah.
I already had all the data I needed. I'd already written everything up, as you said, a few months ago already.
Yeah.
It was more just editing it down to a place where I was happy to hand it in.
Yeah.
But that process could carry on forever. You could always go on and keep on
yeah.
editing it. The real problem was, though, on the day of handing it in, as usual, something wrong has to happen. And it's never in your own hands. So I printed it off. I got it all binded. I went to hand it in. And the person I went to hand it in to said, well, you haven't handed it in online yet. And I said, yes, I understand I haven't handed it in online yet because the website isn't working. So the website I needed to hand in on was just not working on the day that I needed to hand it in.
That's
So-
nice and convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. And they said to me, it's fine, you just failed.
Yeah.
And
Get out.
you wasted 4 years of your life. And I
Actually,
said,
also, if you could pay back all your funding. that'd be
yeah,
great.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
obviously I understood.
So
And I
you
was
wrote
like,
a check then and there and off you
yeah,
went?
there and then I handed it in to them. And he said, okay, well, we'll accept that check, but that's it. And it was good. It was a good experience. And we all learned from these experiences. And I've learned to never trust the university's website. That's all.
Well.
But
Yeah,
no,
I mean, it's
all
sod's
good.
law, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the relief is starting to set in now. At the time, it doesn't feel real, I guess.
Yeah.
And also because I'm the type of person who doesn't get really stressed about things.
No.
So there isn't a massive sense of relief anyway.
I mean, I suppose it is quite an arbitrary thing, isn't it? Just handing a wad of paper to a person.
Yeah, and I guess also now because PhDs are in a paper formats, so you're not really writing towards getting a
Yeah.
dissertation done. You're writing to get these papers published.
Yeah.
So maybe once they're published, you'll feel more of a sense of relief.
Yeah.
But because at the moment I know that's not really the end of those papers anyway. There's still more work that's going to have to be done. I think the Viva, that'll probably be a point where I'm like, okay, now I feel relieved. Now I know that's over and done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, you'll know whether you've passed or failed or what you've got still to do.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
also say that the Viva itself is probably more stressful than handing in as well.
Yeah.
But
I kind of
That's
feel like
nice.
Lady Macbeth
right.
when she was trying to wash the blood off her hands. And at the moment, I'm still washing it off. But
Right.
after the Viva, it'll all be removed.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great analogy.
Thank you. Thank you. I think
that's literally the opposite of what happens in Macbeth.
Yeah. Well, she never
Because
manages to.
she never manages.
Yeah,
to,
she never.
So,
Managed, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's what happened to me too.
oh, that's
Maybe that's the metaphor.
that's sad.
Do you still think about your PhD when you handed it in?
Sometimes. Well, no, actually. So I was trying to remember when I went home that evening, I was trying to recount the tale of you handing in.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what did I do? And I think I went for a pub lunch, but I don't really remember
Yeah.
to celebrate handing it in. But as you
Yeah.
say, handing it in is only... It's the Viva. That's what really
Mhm.
counts, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So,
Yeah, because I haven't done anything really to celebrate yet either.
Well,
Well,
we
the
went for a
issue
pint.
was, I went for a pint with Dr. John Pernay-Fisher, which was, if anything, it was rubbing salt in the wound of handing in.
it was lovely.
really.
Went to the Brewdog that
Yeah.
opened across the road.
Yeah, it was
Hashtag
okay.
not sponsored.
Yeah. But most people were down at the Royal Society
Yeah.
outreach event. That's
So
why.
yeah, this was fantastic. So every year the Royal Society put on a lovely exhibition of science that's showcasing what the UK does, and a number of UK institutions to celebrate Apollo at 50 put together a stall under the loose banner of Living on the Moon. It was really good. I thought they did an excellent job putting the stall together. It was mostly led by the guys down at the OU, but so there was us from Manchester involved, people from the NHM, there were people from Oxford, people from Birkbeck, basically all the main sort of lunar planetary science universities. So no, it was really good. It was jam packed.
And was that from Monday to Friday?
Monday to Sunday.
Monday,
Monday to Sunday. Oh wow! So full week.
Monday to Sunday, and there was quite a nice range of sort of different aspects of lunar science. So they had a couple of Apollo samples in one of these resin blocks that's sort of, I think, specifically for outreach and demonstrating those lunar mythologies.
The collection that's on loan to the UK from NASA. Yeah, that was quite nice. And they had a lovely large lunar meteorite that was that people could touch, and it was enormous. It was probably about the size of my face.
Wow. For the listeners who don't know, John has
a very small face. Yeah, no, it was probably 25 centimeters or so across. And
John's face.
John's face is actually only 6 centimeters across, which is weird because it doesn't look like it in the photos.
Yeah. We actually have to Photoshop John so his face can fit in the images.
Yeah. Oh, it was wonderful.
It was useful working in a building with microscopes for this sort of thing, isn't it?
It's the only way we can see John coming.
You wouldn't believe how volume boosted he is on this.
Yeah.
Tiny John.
Okay.
So, why was it under? So you guys were leading the table, basically talking about living on the moon.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of that? Is that a real intention?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's the sort of general long-term plan, is to sort of establish or at least it's a hypothetical, idealized situation that various space agencies would like to do, that we'd end up establishing some sort of research base on the moon, similar, I suppose, to the research bases that are in Antarctica. So they'd be a modular station that wouldn't be inhabited all the time.
Yeah, the space station is constantly inhabited.
Yeah. So I think this comes from the idea that the funding for the International Space Station isn't necessarily secure for the future.
Okay, right.
So people are thinking about. Well, I mean, they keep extending funding, but it's going to run out at some point, and these deadlines just keep rolling over every few years or whatever. And one of the ideas they have is that if we want to push deeper space travel, i.e. going to Mars, seriously, we need to be able to try and test some of these things that we would need on the moon. And obviously, that's a no-brainer, isn't it? Nearby. And so this comes down to this idea of Lunar Gateway. I can't remember if we talked about this on a previous podcast or not.
I think we might have mentioned it. It's basically the idea that some sort of orbiting craft.
But importantly, it would orbit not just the moon, though. It would do a very weird elliptical orbit around the moon and the Earth.
So like a figure eight.
Yeah. So in case of emergencies, you can get people back easy to the Earth, and that while you're on this orbit, not only would it be pushing human deep space habitation to the furthest they've been, but while you're slinging around the moon, so to speak, you could also do some lunar stuff there. So either control some rovers, maybe drop yourself down to a potential base, or do basically general lunar activities. And then so the idea then as well, of this exhibition then was to say, well, people have been thinking about, can we 3D print the lunar soil to make bricks and tools and parts?
We were talking
to that
to
Gunther about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's a field that's seen a lot of activity in the past few years, and then this idea as well that This the resource breakdown of generating your own water and oxygen there. So. To be honest, it was very loosely hung off that banner. It was mostly showing lunar samples and telling people why, the moon is still a worthy endeavor to investigate 50 years on, I suppose.
Yeah. It's sort of a mission statement that ties together kind of the majority of the lunar activities at the moment, in terms of characterizing and understanding both the materials and the history of the lunar materials, and then also the kind of potential applications in the context of living on the moon. But yeah, no, it was really fun.
It was jam-packed, and if any of the listeners who are listening were there at the Royal Society, I hope you swung by to say hello, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, I heard you guys got voted for the best stall on the first day, I think
so. From what I understand, we were one of the more popular ones, which
Yeah.
is always nice to hear.
Definitely,
The large lunar rock had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, no, I think the promise of being able to see quite such a large chunk of moon had quite a lot of people interested.
Yeah.
Just the number of people that came up and said, which of these is the chunk of moon? And I'd be like,
that's all they're
this
interested
one.
in.
And then they'd be like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But that said, it was great because people asked lots of questions.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And
it was a lot of fun.
Did you ever think about inhabiting the moon before this? I've never really thought about it. I've always thought about it in the sense of we need to go there because it's going to be a way of jumping off to other places, such as Mars. But there's so much important research that could be done if we actually did have a base on the moon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think no one had really taken it too seriously as a concept maybe 10 years ago.
And do you think now it is becoming...
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that if space agencies like NASA are really serious about wanting to put a person on Mars, then, we have to think about these sort of deep space structures in a very serious way and actually do something about it instead of just waffle on. It sounds quite science fiction, but, it's not beyond the realms of impossibility.
Sending robots to Mars 20 years ago would probably seem like science fiction.
Funnily enough, sending robots to Mars sounds more science fiction to me than sending a person to Mars.
But having a lunar base,
Yeah.
that's quite a good sci-fi trope, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know, in my head, it sounds so simple. You've had people go there before. Why can't we just build a base there?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something that I was saying to people at the time. It requires the political will. I think we've got the technology and the expertise.
Well, I mean, exactly. Like, before we build a base, maybe we should put somebody on there for the first time in 45 plus years. Just at all.
Well, exactly. So I think that's probably what's going to happen, isn't it? We'll just see people go down first before we start constructing a massive base.
For me, one of the interesting things, I mean, talking to kind of a lot of people about the moon, a lot of people ask similar questions, and that's because they're good questions.
Yes,
Why are there dark parts of the moon, light parts of the moon, that sort of thing. What was also kind of interesting was hearing how different people with different contexts of their study of the moon will answer those questions differently, kind of coming at the information from a different direction, or what detail they kind of choose to include or not, which was interesting in kind of evaluating how I describe the moon and kind of lunar processes to people as well. So it was useful in that sense.
And there also in general, there was some great exhibits actually.
Yeah. So what did you guys go look at then?
Yeah, I talked to some people from Cambridge, I think they were, who were talking about building skyscrapers out of wood. And they've got a special way of treating wood that they can build large, and I'm told fire-resistant structures.
Wow.
And I think
okay.
And so they were talking
about. Is that for economic purposes? Then it's just a lot cheaper.
No, it's more sustainable and greener. So they'd use pine, which grows really fast, and then so it'd use less concrete, and it would capture CO2 as well, I guess, in principle.
I never really thought about.
It's. I mean, I guess it's. Apparently, there are some skyscrapers in America that already make use of this technology, but they're trying to research it more to make it a bit more of an affordable actual building material, which is quite interesting.
I think that was quite a sort of common theme among the stalls generally, was it wasn't all sort of, brand new arm wavy science. It was stuff that has already been developed, and it was about the applications of that, the testing and kind of ongoing development.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. So for instance, there were some other people there who were developing AI softwares for self-driving cars.
Okay.
And they had a little demonstration on one of those little radio-controlled toy cars of how that works. But
Tesla are already doing this though in a commercial sense. They have cars
exactly.
This was sort of about the development of the AI that kind of makes those decisions, and about how it identifies things, how it differentiates between, clear open road and something that it needs to stop for.
I mean, I did ask the classic question actually about the ethical problem of do you veer off into a crowd of people or into
to save the driver
exactly, and he said it was just above his pay grade. I don't think he had the answer.
Fair enough.
Great exhibition, and I'd recommend people to visit.
Keep an eye out for
and it was free too, actually. For a free
cool.
event, it was amazing.
Was it packed?
Oh yeah, people were queuing around the corners to get in.
That's
it was,
incredible.
It was rampant.
Yeah, it's good. It's easy when you're involved in science day to day to forget that it's important that the public are involved in it as well.
Oh yeah, a big believer in that. Yeah,
and it's exciting to know that people do still queue up just to see what's happening in the world of science. It's great.
I thought it was really interesting how innovative some of the other outreach methods were as well, because I think we're sort of lucky when we're in the planetary science community in that there's a really kind of significantly inherent kind of coolness, you know, general excitement about space and about, you know, the moon and Mars. And I think that a lot of times, you know, the moon sort of speaks for itself and we just describe it, which makes talking to people about it really easy. And what I was amazed about was some of the things that I might not necessarily go, oh wow, that sounds really cool. 5-minute chat with the people on those stalls and you come away, you know, with a much better understanding of both whatever it was they were talking about and how interesting it is.
I mean, it's the passion that always shines through in these sorts of situations, isn't it, I find. It's been quite particularly with the Apollo 50th anniversary, which hopefully we'll talk a bit more next week, it's been quite an outreach intense period for us. A lot of us are going to the Bluedot Festival in Jodrell Bank in Cheshire next weekend, and Tom, you are volunteering. So if any one of our listeners are going to Bluedot, you can go meet Tom and grab his autograph.
No, we're going to be taking some little forms so to collect people's questions. So on the off chance that anybody listening is burning to ask a question and doesn't know how to use the YouTube comment box and plans on being at Bluedot, then that's your chance.
Don't try and get close to Tom though, because his bodyguard will push you out of the way if you get too close.
Pretty high profile.
And no paparazzis, please, as well.
So what sort of activities are going on at Bluedot then? What are we doing as a group? I've never been to Bluedot, so I don't actually know.
Oh, it sounds like there's, again, a kind of range of stuff. I think they're taking some interesting samples. They've got some meteorite samples of all different types, differentiated, undifferentiated, which are all pretty beautiful. I think there's the promise of some kind of, I don't know what the word is.
Volcano displays.
Volcano displays, yeah.
So when we do outreach in general, as a group, we will focus on the planetary side of things. But at Bluedot, we're merging the planetary and the volcano side of the university together. So we will have all the meteorites we usually talk about. We will also have displays from the volcano people showing different kind of eruptions, essentially, but in a real sense.
Featuring a trash cano this year.
Trashcano.
What is that exactly? Something to do with nitrogen.
It's I think it's basically a kind of liquid nitrogen explosion.
Yeah.
Probably.
So
for
it's supposed
health
to
and
replicate.
Safety reasons, I couldn't call it an explosion, but it's meant to kind of replicate the movement of material in an eruption.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, so if people want to see what we're talking about, we actually have a video on our Twitter. I think it might also be on the Facebook. Recently came out of a demonstration of that. So Marissa Lowe, who's been on here, she did a demonstration of it. And so you guys should watch it if you haven't already.
Alternatively, come along to Bluedot. I don't know if they're sold out. If not,
probably is.
Sneak under the fence or something.
But the group is normally there every year. So, go next year. Yeah. And it's also a music festival. Who are headlining this year? New Order, I think. New
Order, Kraftwerk, and Hot Chip.
Well, Hot Chip. Well, there we are. Hot dang.
And also, John, you just pronounced a New Order as though it was some words you've never heard before.
It was this New Order?
New Order?
Newt Order? Yeah. Brilliant.
I like Hot Chip.
Good.
I like chocolate chip too. So, Tom, you also had your first year transfer report as well last week, didn't you?
Yeah, so at the end of your first year, you write up kind of a really comprehensive literature review of everything that you've read about over the year. And so in my case, that was a lot about impacts as a process, a lot about the moon and impact structures on the moon, and then, similar sorts of structures on asteroids. And then I also looked at those structures on asteroids. And then you kind of outline the plan of what you're going to do for the rest of your project, basically. So it's looking at what techniques are available to analyze your samples, what samples you want to look at, and trying to plan out 2.5 years worth of project time, essentially. And then we sort of do a mini Viva first year transfer interview, which is to discuss with somebody outside of your project and kind of defend the decisions, the plan essentially, and that went well. So that's good. So I'm allowed to do the next year of my PhD, which is cool.
Yeah, it was a surprise to all of us, but yeah, that's good.
To me, most of all.
So how long did this take?
It's about an hour and a bit. Not too ridiculous, but it was good. It was good.
Did you find talking to another academic who's not directly in your field about what you do was helpful? Do you feel like they came from another perspective you never thought about?
Oh,
before?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I thought it was really interesting, especially between planetary and terrestrial studies. Something that kind of came up a lot while I was reading was how nomenclature and terminology varies a lot from kind of research community to research community. And it can be difficult to say what different people are referring to, whether they actually mean the same thing or whether they are actually describing something different. So it was useful in that sense because I had to make sure that I was explaining everything kind of broadly enough to make sure that wasn't an issue.
Yeah. A lot of cases, actually, these nomenclature issues are completely unnecessary. Like, a lot of the Martian community get bent out of shape about what they call their samples, and a lot of terrestrial people get upset because they borrow some words that aren't strictly speaking in the same.
There seems to be there's this kind of this link between like process and composition. So you can have a basaltic composition impact melt on the moon, but that isn't a basalt because that implies kind of eruption processes, and so that making clear to not kind of stray over those boundaries is important.
I suppose you should sort of call it a mafic thing, shouldn't you? In that regard.
Or what I tried to do was use terms which were as kind of plainly descriptive as possible. So say, in that sense, a impact melt of basaltic composition, because there's no need to overcomplicate things by introducing
and there's
just
no
further nomenclature.
It's just like, I know what you mean. Fair enough. My Viva will be in about 4 to 6 weeks, I think it normally is, after you've handed in. Something around that time. They have to let you know, essentially. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to have I think it's Professor Sanjeev Gupta, and he looks at the Mars rover. So
he drives it.
He drives it around, and that'll be interesting because he's not directly related to Martian River Valley networks, but obviously the Mars rover is in a place which is thought to have been a previous lake / there was a river running through there. So it'd be really interesting to see his perspective on things. I was talking to Tim Gregory, now Dr. Tim Gregory.
Yeah, a friend of the channel's.
Yeah, and he recently had his Viva and he gave me a really good perspective on it because I think a lot of people are really terrified to go into it. I know you were scared about your first year one.
It is an intimidating thing for sure. Yeah,
but you gave me a really good perspective of imagine
down.
When else in your life are you going to get to sit down with someone and talk about what you've done? For a good few hours.
That's true. Never.
Yeah.
And they'll be actually interested as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm actually quite looking forward to it. Yeah. I say that now. Let's see if I cry on the next podcast after it's done. Yeah.
What sort of happens in a Viva? I mean, you go in, they've seen your thesis and have made comments on it, and then they just kind of rip it to shreds, or they like it and they don't.
People are not out there to be malicious or anything. They just want to generally have a chat. Just talk about your projects, talk about some of the questions and comments they might have. Ask you what you really think, or whether these views are your supervisors, particularly if there's a controversial topic.
I don't know your feelings when you had yours, but at the moment, it might be because I've just handed in. Pardon?
I was petrified.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A friend of mine said I was the most nervous he'd ever seen me.
Wow.
Well, because you don't know what they're going to ask, do you? So.
Well, that's what I mean. For me, in my head, I can't imagine what they're going to ask. I mean, I can't imagine it lasting very long because I can't see what questions they're going to ask.
Well, preparing for is difficult. I mean, I think all you can really do is just, read through your thesis and try and anticipate areas where you think your examiner may be knowledgeable about and try and read a bit more background information maybe. But, ultimately... I suppose
you've got 3.5 years of broad context.
Yeah, absolutely.
As to your project and kind of like the back-end information in your brain. So everything that you've chosen to include or not include, you've made that decision based on having seen everything.
Yes,
whereas they're only seeing what you chose to include.
And it's all there at the forefront of your mind, whereas the examiner would have spent, maybe a couple of weeks reading it or whatever. So
Yeah. Oh.
It certainly sounds like an interesting process, even if it is not a particularly comfortable one.
So I've had a minor experience of being on their end, and I recently reviewed a paper, and obviously I'm not allowed to talk about which paper it is. But it was interesting being on the other side of things, because you do only see that perspective of what people decide to include, which obviously when you read a paper, that's exactly what it is, but you're not as analytical, I think, whereas you have to be really analytical when you're reviewing the paper, because you don't want to do either the writer or the journal injustice on it. Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting experience. I think the most exciting part for me was getting an email saying, would you like to review a paper for us? And I thought, oh, people actually care about what I think. That's exciting.
What's really weird is that they didn't know that you're doing a PhD on Mars.
Yeah.
And they still ask.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it was it was a Precambrian extinction paper.
That's pretty strange.
Yeah.
Give it your best shot anyway.
Yeah, you know I'm like.
He's a
I
trier.
always give it the best shot. Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll see some of you all at Bluedot in a few weeks. I hope you've enjoyed this little ramble of ours.
Yeah.
So next week we'll probably be doing an episode, a very special episode to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Apollo.
Yeah.
And then really there's only a few more weeks to go until we go on hiatus for the summer, so we'll give you all a chance to go outside and enjoy the sunshine. But for our very final episode, we're going to do another Q&A.
Yeah. We're not going to tell you the format which we're going to do it through. That'll be a surprise.
It is a surprise.
But would 100% recommend submitting a question.
Yes.
Because it's probably the most entertaining way we can think of actually answering them.
Yes, yeah. So please do send in your questions to us.
Yeah.
They can be semi-personal, but let's try and keep them planetary.
Yeah.
We look forward to it. We really do.
Yeah. So just bob a comment below, or bob a comment in any of our videos, really, and we'll see them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And please remember to hit subscribe and like. It helps us a lot.
Yeah, and tell your friends, of course.
Yeah. And please do comment. Yeah, it lets us know what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for listening.
And we'll see you all next week.